Hi, today I am going to explain an action movie titled The Beekeeper, released 2024. Watch out. Spoilers ahead, watch it at your own risk. In an isolated area, away from the busy streets and infinite traffic, Mrs. Parker lives by herself, but has a tenant in a shed, Clay, who's leading a silent life as a beekeeper. One day, handling finances, Mrs. Parker catches a notification of a virus on her laptop. She calls the number exhibited that attaches her to a fishing company. The ringleader, Mickey, takes it upon himself to set a model to his trainees. He assures Mrs. Parker that the announcement comes from the pre-installed package she installed on her laptop and recommends her to update it. Since Mrs. Parker isn't a computer person, Mickey offers to do it for her, remotely. She just has to download a little program called Friendly Me, granting him access. Just as she does, Mickey mutes the call, revealing to everyone in the company Mrs. Parker's checking, life insurance, pension and best of all, a charity account with $2 million in it. Mickey initiates strip mining, but at this point Mrs. Parker still doesn't suspect whatever. Mickey assures her it's totally normal. What's more, because of the inconvenience, he promises to credit her back the subscription fee, supposedly transmitting it to the account she manages. To verify the transfer, she attempts to log in and sees a transfer of $50,000. It's all part of Mickey's scheme, using sympathy. Mrs. Parker baits, and using the master password attempts to wire back the money. This is where Mickey marks, emptying all her accounts in an instant. A great win for him. When Mrs. Parker's screen turns back on, all of her accounts are emptied. She can't believe it. Her phone starts popping off about fraudulent activities, and the cruel realization starts to slowly set in. Meanwhile, Clay is extracting that sweet honey, setting aside a jar for Mrs. Parker. In the night he visits her to hand it over, but no one answers the door, so he lets himself in. The fire alarm is blaring and somewhat is off. Walking into the next room, he finds a fired gun. He's abruptly ambushed and is told to drop to his knees by Victoria, Mrs. Parker's daughter. Clay expresses his sympathy to her. Mrs. Parker has removed herself. At this point Clay is the main suspect. Victoria declines to admit her mother killing herself. He calmly replies the agent's questions. He was just carrying her a jar of honey. His story of being a beekeeper checks out. When Victoria checks her mother's accounts, she figures that this might have been the reason for the early removal. GSR negative and Mrs. Parker's fingerprints on the gun. There is only one explanation. Victoria says sorry for being a bit too harsh, but it's reasonable. To get to know the person her mother lived with, she offers him for a cup of coffee. Victoria divulges that Clay reminded her mother of Victoria's deceased brother, a former Marine raider. Mrs. Parker always gave him more praise for mowing the lawn than her graduating the FBI Academy. Victoria reveals that somebody emptied all of her mother's accounts. She got scammed. Victoria talked with an agent from the cybercrimes office. Apparently the crew that got Mrs. Parker has been working for years, and they still don't have their names. She is negative that they will ever be brought to justice. Clay compares stealing from elderly as like hurting a child, but worse, there is no parent to protect them. Either it goes unnoticed or nobody cares. Victoria cares. She curses to seek vengeance. Clay takes his leave. He has to take care of the hive. Moreover, seeking justice for Mrs. Parker, Clay contacts the Beekeepers, a secret group he retired from, asking for a favor in finding Mickey's crew. Subsequently, Clay receives an address for the scammers, a call center run by Mickey. Arriving with 2 gas canisters, the security tells him to go back where he came from, but he's here to burn it down. Disassembling them with a 1-2 punch, he makes his way inside and grips everyone's attention, asking them to repeat after him, "I will never steal from the weak and the vulnerable again." But he's only met with laughter. Fine, there are other ways to make himself clear. This time no one's laughing. After they repeat the oath, he makes sure they keep the promise by pouring the gasoline all over. Mickey tries to stop him, but it's Clay's way of smoking the hornets to protect the hive. He simply deals with the 5 security guards, like a walk in the park for an ex-special agent, and carry on to place bombs on the gas canisters that will trigger from the next call made to this center. Just as additional family infected with the virus calls the center, Clay is already out and the place blows up. At Danforth Enterprises in Boston, the spoiled Jarek Danforth himself accepts a call from Mickey, notifying him about the displeased customer incident, explaining how Clay just tore through the security like a hot knife through butter and burned the ground. A 30-mil building is now just a pile of wreckage. The worst part is they have no clue who did it. Jarek has to big dog this one. He goes to his consultant, who ran the CIA back in his time, requesting if he can find and take care of Clay. But he wants no part of it. No biggie, Jarek tells Mickey to log into the cloud and look for anybody associated to the last few deals they closed. Then go American gangster on that fella. In an uncertain voice, Mickey promises to get it done. A while later, Victoria gets to the scene. No one can classify the culprit, but she's internally celebrating a small triumph against these scammers. Back to his place, Clay just delights in his beekeeping. But it's just peace before the storm. Mickey arrives with his soldiers at Mrs. Parker's home. Spotting Clay driving off, Mickey wants to go eye for an eye, shooting up Clay's beehives. Hearing the shots, Clay triggers multiple machines to mask the sound. With them arriving, he hides in the shadows, forcing them to fire and advance. Clay gently disassembles Mickey's army one by another one. The bad guys never learn not to separate. With Mickey left alone and in a state of panic seeing his men dead, he is defeated. Clay severs the boy's fingers, leaving him alive to send a message. Through the course of an investigation, Victoria receives a message about a fire at her mother's house, only to ascertain that the identified bodies are connected with the same company. It is at this point that everything starts to click for the agents. Clay is accountable for it. Mickey calls Jarek while stopped at the bridge, interfering his relaxation or whatsoever session, expecting good news, but it's been a downward spiral. Just as Mickey is explaining that Clay is some kind of a beekeeper ninja, abruptly, Clay drags Mickey out of the car, strapping him and sending him off the bridge. Taking up the phone, he lets Jarek know he's next, sending chills down the boy's spine. With this, he goes to his big dog, explaining that some mad beekeeper is after him. Burned down one of his 20 call centers. It suddenly clicks for Walter, a beekeeper. He knows Jarek is in trouble big time, unaware of the unlawful aspects of his business. Jarek doesn't understand why Walter is so afraid of that nuisance nobody. That nuisance nobody is a beekeeper. The beekeeper is a man of focus, commitment, sheer will, somewhat Jarek knows very little about. Being ex-CIA director, Walter swears him that there is nothing he can do to help him. The FBI finally starts to piece the riddle and are sure there must be an insider to all these deceitful call centers. What's more of a mystery is Clay. He's invisible. The only thing they have on him is his birth certificate. The only explanation, he's in some sort of confidential program. Jessica calls Walter, begging him to look after her son, granting more shares in the company. That's all he wanted to hear. He hangs up the "never call me on this line" link in the CIA, and with one mention of his dumb manager catching the attention of the beekeeper, she knows it's serious. He needs Janet's help. The manager of the special beekeeper program calls Walter, informing him that Clay is a retired agent and the current active beekeeper is going to be taking things from here. Still, that doesn't set his mind at ease. Silently staring at his honey, Clay's car is struck from behind. The psycho whips her gun and starts blasting, but Clay's already out. The police don't daunt her, and as Clay locks her neck, she finds it amusing. The two go at it, but somehow she struggles to equal the unarmed Clay. No problem, a minigun will do the work, firing the whole gas station. Clay whips out his jar of honey and just throws it at her, setting her on fire. Clay cuts off her finger before driving off. Afterwards, the beekeepers declare neutrality, leaving Walter on his own. The FBI slowly catches up with Clay's tricks, finding Mickey's body and arriving at the gas station scene. The girl is also a ghost, just like their friend they're chasing. What's more, she has a book about beekeeping. The agents guess that Clay is on his way to Boston. Walter has assembled all ex-military, explaining to them that a secret organization that isn't disclosed to even the director of the CIA for decades has operated from the shadows. The beekeepers are given all resources and are allowed to act on their own decision. But now, a retired beekeeper has gone rascal and isn't acting in the hive's best interest. He calls the former Special Forces personnel a group of babies compared to Beekeeper, but maybe with ample of them, they have a chance. Using the psycho woman's finger to enter her facility, Clay has access to all her collection and intelligence. Tracking down the base of Jarek's operations and stocking up on materials, Clay sets out to fulfill his promise to Jarek. Victoria informs the FBI deputy director that 3 crime scenes are associated with Clay, who is connected to a confidential program named Beekeeper. He's on his way to Boston, and his next target is 9 Star United, which oversees all of Jarek's global scam call centers. The director heard enough, allowing the agents full funding to deal with Clay. Somewhat that never happens. The FBI SWAT team storms the building, but the private security has it on lock. They settle for a boundary outside. The team goes through all the other entrances this building has, but there is none. Clay himself confirms it, or else he would have used it. He doesn't want to damage anyone unnecessarily, but the SWAT team leaves him no choice. While being encircled, he somehow just pulverizes 15 armed men, and with one of them as a hostage walks in through the front. Briefly in the building, the mercenary commander, Peter, tries to evacuate anybody who isn't armed, but the ringleader, Golden Goose, refuses. He arrogantly calls up Jarek, who in turn castigates Peter for not doing his job properly. No one will evacuate. As they clap the armed men leaving, Clay is amongst them. Tossing a guy around, he silences the floor, and the Golden Goose still doesn't comprehend the situation. But when Peter men start blasting, he's quick to kiss the floor. Clay achieves to run to the hallway and climb up the ceiling. With one man down as bait, he deals with two more. To Guy's sound, he triggers the fire alarm and pounces on Peter's weapon, neutralizing a few more before disarming him. Whipping out an axe, Clay takes a fire extinguisher, blinding Peter and kick him out. With more agents on the street, Victoria instructs them to roll in. Clay sets up wires for his next plan. Just as the soldiers think they have him cornered in an elevator, he blows the cable wire, taking those who ran out down with the elevator. Crashing at the bottom, the agents prefer to take the stairs anyway. With the mercenary chain of command in dismay, they are just sitting ducks for Clay to pick off in the dark. With all of them dead, the golden goose is next on the chopping block. Using stapler as a torture device, Clay needs to know who's above him. Explaining in the course why he's doing it. It's all because they messed with the only person that ever took care of him. The golden goose finally cracks, telling him the top dogs in this charade. Finally, Victoria made her way there. Directly speaking with Clay, she comforts him. There are laws for these things, but Clay says there are things laws can't fix, but he can. Making his escape as the rest of the agents arrive. For now, they settle for the golden goose and his crew. Checking at the laptop, Victoria now also knows who is Clay's next target. At some expensive restaurant, Jarek is worried sick, and Walter obtains the awful news. His mercenary guys are all gone. Perhaps it's time to call Jarek's mother. Clay can't take stroke if they're in Jessica's and her people's vicinity. Jarek loves the idea. Jarek calls her up. Without disclosing his Clay situation, he asks if he can visit her, and she agrees. Turns out Jessica is the President of the United States of America. No way Clay can eliminate the Queen Bee, right? Victoria's agent friend remarks that maybe it's a good idea just to let Clay do his thing, but she can't, even if it's the morally right thing to do. Victoria informs the FBI deputy director that Clay is following the money. 9-Star United uses data mining software to classify people with no heirs or family, targeting their assets. Then there is another company, Tangled, which several US government agencies use. Both worked by Danforth Enterprises, founded and operated by Jessica Danforth, who lately stepped down because she was sworn in as the president. They are the only three that know of this, and the deputy director wants to keep it that way. At the Danforth Beach house, the security is tight. But Victoria is there to make it secure. Jarek is already there, chilling, having a beer. But Walter can't stop freaking, like this volume of Secret Service agents isn't enough to stop one man. Walter even hired the most elite team he could think of. Yellow has killed one beekeeper before, at a cost though. Eager to be this lucky this time around as well. Jessica is furious no one informed her of what's at stake. The Secret Service goes as far as welding shut every manhole around the estate and carefully checking all vehicle that comes through. Making his way into the sewer system, the welded lid doesn't stop Clay from opening the manhole. Hopping on a skateboard and making his way to a car in front. But one of the agents spots Clay, but before he could report it, Clay disables him and stuffs him in. Now, Clay has the perfect disguise to just waltz in. With Yellow's kill squad incoming, the place might be the most protected location on the entire Earth. Not even Rambo could break through, but did Rambo have timed explosives? Changing into a suit, here begins the next part of Clay's plan. Just merge in with the rest of the guests. Victoria sees the deputy director talking with the president, understanding that she's learning the truth. Grasping her son, they go into a private room, where only 3 of them remain. The deputy director calls out the family about his worries, including illegal money, and Jessica directs the question to Jarek, as the head of the business. This makes him uneasy. Looking for his targets, Clay is spotted by Victoria, and he gives her a nod, but she advises all Secret Services that Clay is in the house. The kill squad is also in action. Finding him outdoor, with all guns on him, Clay is about to surrender, but what's that in his hand? Walter gives a go sign for an execution, but Clay doesn't think so. Blowing up the cars is enough of a disturbance to shoot a few guys and make his way into the house. Yellow still isn't out of it. Clay wants as few deaths as possible. Taking an agent hostage warrants him a safe passage. In the yard, he dismantles the kill squad members one by one, surely making his way to the main target, who at this point starts a family feud. Jessica blames it all on Jarek, but without the illegal funding for her campaign, she would never have won the election. Turns out Jessica never knew where the money came from, but Jarek isn't about morals, he just needed to get the work done. Like clockwork, Clay goes through the agents without anybody shooting him in the back or something like that. He got all his angles covered alone. Jessica decides that she will tell Clay and the whole world the truth about Jarek's use of the data mining software, even if it costs her everything. Clay is seconds away from the room with Jarek and co, but Yellow is a tough nut to crack. The two go hand-to-hand battle, throwing each other around. At this point I'm sure that Clay is like a Terminator, and Yellow isn't the T-1000. Psych, or is he? Nope, the missing leg was the problem. Yellow is gone. At this point, Victoria might be the only one Clay has a soft spot for. Though stopping his bleeding, Walter says Clay that he has proved his point, he can still turn back, live a silent life. But they are way past that point, it's personal for Clay, and he is here to right the wrongs. He plants a claymore on the door and sits Walter down. As Clay is about to make his entrance, Jarek shoots the director and takes his mother captive the moment Clay blows up the door and enters. Victoria also makes her entrance and there's a standoff. Clay tells Victoria to choose, she works for the law or for justice. He one-taps Jarek and makes his escape. President is unharmed. Victoria still has a shot, but she picks out justice. Clay gives her a final nod before jumping away, where he has a suit stashed with swim gear. He is out. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and hit the like button to help the channel out. Thank you very much for watching.